Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Surabhyaya Namaha.
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 Mukhaṁ karoti vāsaram pāṅgum lāṅgāyate giram yatkripatamaham bhante srigaram dinataranam yatkripatamaham bhante srigaram dinataranam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome to our Srimad Bhagavatam class. Continuing to read from canto number 4, chapter 13, entitled The Descendants of Dhruva Maharaj. Text number 22, huh? Yes. Kim Bamho Vena Udishya Brahma Dandam Ayuyujan Danda Vrata Dhare Rajni Munayo Dharma Kovidaha Kimbamho Vena Udishya
Kimmam Vena Uddishya
Brahmadandam Ayuyujan
Brahmadandam Yuyujajam
Danda Vrata Dhare Rajni
Dandavrata Dhare Rajni
Munayo Dharma Kovita
Munayo Dharma Kovida
Munayo Dharma Kovida
Munayo Dharma Kovida
Kimbamho Vena Udishya
Kimmam Vena Uddishya
Brahmadandam Ayuyujan
Brahmadandam Ayuyujam
Dandavrata Dhare Rajni
Dandavrata Dhare Rajni
Munayo Dharma Kovita
Munayo Dharma Kovida
Kimbamho Vena Udishya
Kimmam Vena Uddishya
Brahmadandam Ayuyujan
Brahmadandam Ayuyujam
Dandavrata Dhare Rajni
Dandavrata Dhare Rajni
Munayo Dharma Kovidaha
Munayo Dharma Kovida
Kim Why Va Also
Also
Amha
Amha
Sinful activities
Sinful activities
Vene
Vene
Unto Vena
Unto Vena
Udishya
Uddishya
Seeing
Seeing
Brahmadandam
Brahmadandam
The curse of a Brahmana
The curse of a Brahmana
Ayuyujan
Ayuyujan
They desired to award
They desire to award
Dandavrata Dhare
Dandavrata Dhare
who carries the rod of punishment
Who carries the rod of punishment
Rajni
Rajni
unto the king
unto the king
Munayaha
Munayaha
the great sages
The great sages
Dharma Kovidaha
Dharma Kovida
completely conversant
Completely conversant
with religious principles.
with religious principles.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Vidura also inquired, how is it that the great sages who were completely conversant with religious principles desired to curse King Vena, who himself carried the rod of punishment, and thus awarded him the greatest punishment, Brahma Shapa. Kindly repeat after me. Vidura also inquired.
Vidura also inquired,
How is it
How is it
that the great sages
that the great sages
who were completely conversant
who were completely conversant
with religious principles
with religious principles
desired to curse King Vena,
desired to curse King Vena,
who himself
who himself
carried the rod of punishment
carried the rod of punishment
and thus awarded him
and thus awarded him
the greatest punishment,
the greatest punishment,
Brahma Shapa.
Brahmashap.
Shap. Purport. It is understood that the king is able to give punishment to everyone. But in this case, it appears that the great sages punished him. The king must have done something very serious. Otherwise, how could the great sages, who were supposed to be the greatest and most tolerant, still punish him in spite of their elevated religious consciousness? It appears also that the king was not independent of the Brahminical culture. Above the king was the control of the Brahmanas, and if needed, the Brahmanas would dethrone the king or kill him, not with any weapon, but with the mantra of a Brahmashapa. The Brahmanas were so powerful that simply by their cursing, one would immediately die. Translation again, Vidura also inquired, how is it that the great sages who were completely conversant with religious principles desired to curse King Vena, who himself carried the rod of punishment, and thus awarded him the greatest punishment, Brahmashapa? Shapa is snake.
No, sharp.
Shap,
Sharp is curse.
curse. What is the word for snake?
Sarp.
Sarp.
It's similar to sarpa. Sarp.
Oh, sarp.
Yeah.
Okay. Sarp. Sarp. Yes. That's what happens when you don't go to Gurukul. So here, the reference is made to the power of a king. A king is actually considered most powerful because he is meant to uphold the principles of dharma. And when he is enthroned, there are special mantras that are chanted to actually empower the king. King has to be powerful because the primary duty and responsibility of a king is to give protection, sometimes physical protection to the citizens, or physical protection to protect the land, the territory, the kingdom. So that is a natural quality, an expected quality that must be there for someone to take on the responsibility of a king. So here Vidura is asking, although there were all of these great, very elevated sages, and they were all conversant in the science of Krishna consciousness or in the science of dharma. How is it that they took such an action? They're meant to be very merciful and very tolerant, sadhus. So this will be commented upon in the verses to come. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada indicates that although, yes, that is the position of a Rajarshi, but in this case, actually, Vena was not, he was missing the rishi part. He was Raja, but was not upholding the principles of dharma. And therefore, as we have heard and as we see in this verse, although it is meant to be the primary responsibility of leaders who have this kind of position as a king or as a president of a country or prime minister, the Brahmanas, that is also their primary duty and responsibility, and they are also more well versed in the principles of dharma, and they are actually more powerful because of their Brahmanical position, because they can curse, as we are seeing here. They can actually, simply by curse, can bring upon the death of an individual. And this is exactly what happened in the case of King Bina. This is very exceptional. Brahmanas don't go around. Anyways, in Kali Yuga, we don't have to be afraid because there aren't such kind of Brahmanas who sometimes we see, oh, curse you, they take out their Brahman thread, but it has no value. At least in our present day. There might be one or two here or there, but this was very much the situation. When the Brahmanical culture is in place, then individuals, especially the Brahmanas, they become very powerful, especially by the knowledge that they cultivate. They have very deep knowledge about the Vedic literatures. They know all kinds of mantras, and therefore, as demonstrated here, they can dethrone a very powerful personality like King Vena, who was misusing his position as a king or as a monarch by stopping religious principles, religious activities. It's a little bit interesting how there's more and more concern being expressed in different countries of the world now because of the situation, very unusual, most unusual situation in which we find ourselves in with this, global pandemic which is ongoing. And there are religious groups, because people cannot come to their mosque or come to their church. So there are a number of prominent religious leaders who are becoming disturbed by this situation, that what is naturally part of one's spiritual life, to come and pray. This is especially taking place in China right now, for example, which is of course expected in one sense because it is a communist country. But even in here in India, which is not communist, and in other countries as well, of course, it means that actually the actual norm or standard is that those who are leaders in society, they are meant to take guidance from religious persons, and that's hardly happening, and therefore to a large extent because we don't have this in place. All kinds of, we can say, irregularities are there. So we get a little glimpse. Maybe we can just read the next text, which is relatively short as well, just to carry on with the story that is being presented here. So in the next text, which is number 23, the translation is as follows. It is the duty of all citizens in a state never to insult the king, even though he sometimes appears to have done something very sinful. Because of his prowess, the king is always more influential than all other ruling chiefs. Purport. Purport gives the following purport. According to Vedic civilization, the king is supposed to be the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is called Narayana, indicating that Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears in human society as a king. It is etiquette that neither a Brahmana nor a Kshatriya king is ever insulted by the citizens. Even though a king appears to be sinful, the citizens should not insult him. But in the case of Vena, it appears that he was cursed by the Nara Devatas, the Brahmanas. Therefore, it was concluded that his sinful activities were very grievous. Not so much to comment on this, unless somebody has some question or comment on this.
Next one also we can read. Next verse. Next verse also we can read.
Next verse also continues the last portion of the question by Vidura. That is text number 24. Vidura requested Maitreya, my dear Brahmana, you are well conversant with all subjects, both past and future. Therefore, I wish to hear from you all the activities of King Vena. I am your faithful devotee. So please explain this. And purport, Vidura accepted Maitreya as his spiritual master. A disciple always inquires from the spiritual master, and the spiritual master answers the question, provided the disciple is very gentle and devoted. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said that by the mercy of the spiritual master, one is blessed with the mercy of the Supreme Lord. The spiritual master is not inclined to disclose all the secrets of transcendental science unless the disciple is very submissive and devoted. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the process of receiving knowledge from the spiritual master entails submission inquiry and service. And then after this verse, then Maitreya will begin to explain the story. Will narrate actually the King Vena's story more in detail. Anything?
One question.
Yeah.
King Vena was having displayed these bad characters, so still why they choose him as a king?
Yeah, that's also. So the question is, everyone knew, the Brahmanas knew that he had these bad qualities or bad character. Why did they appoint him as a king? It's explained that actually it was, we can say, a temporary arrangement in that there were many, when there is no king, then all kinds of rogues and thieves appear and plunder, and the whole society becomes very much disordered and people are unprotected. So I can recall one of the purports where Prabhupada was explaining that when King Vena, although because he himself is a rogue, but because he was a big rogue, it calmed down all the other, it did bring temporarily some order in society in that everyone was afraid of him. But that was short-lived, and I guess those details come out in the actual story. There needs to be someone who's designated, and sometimes it may not be the most ideal person, but temporarily for bringing about some kind of at least temporary solution that will be done. When King Vena was enthroned for some period of time, there was society came back to some order, but then he went to extremes by totally forbidding all kinds of Brahminical activities, etc., like that. So maybe they wanted to give him a chance, or at least for some time bring some order in society. That's what I recall reading. Okay, we'll stop here. Jai Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai. Jai.